What's the most interesting experience at the pawn shop?
Oh, man. So when we first started working there, that particular pawn shop sold beer and minnows and alcohol, tobacco, firearms. I mean, they sold everything. And a guy came in and pawned a pipe wrench for $2 so he could buy a 40 ounce of whatever it was he was drinking. Now, the guy that I worked with, he had actually loaned money on some false teeth one time.
Oh, my gosh.
Fake leg. We loan money on just about anything. So.
The fake leg. So how...
Like,
Hey guys, my name is Derek Hines. I'm the managing partner here at Gaddis Premier Wealth Advisors. And I'm here with Dave Reed, one of our principals, one of our partners here at the firm. You know, our main objective with these first several podcasts is really just to introduce you to our firm and our principals. So, hey Dave.
hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Great day.
Great day.
Yep.
So what makes today so great?
Well, I got to spend this morning with my daughter who's going to Dallas Baptist University.
Yeah.
We toured SMU Law School. She's in the process of trying to figure out where she's going to go to law school, which is much more involved than the process I went through picking my schooling.
Yeah.
Yeah, very fascinating.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is that sounds expensive.
Depends on where she goes. Your LSAT determines a great deal of whatever financial aid, if any, you're going to get. GPA helps, but they lean pretty heavy on what that LSAT score is, which she took last Saturday, I believe. So we're eagerly awaiting the results of that.
Yeah. How long between when you take it and when you get your results?
4 to 6 weeks. So
yeah.
Then I know how.
Do they actually grade it? I mean, there's like someone in a room with a red pen.
I don't know how that works. I would assume the IRS is doing it because that's how slow they are, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Oh man, so can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your position in the firm, what you do for Gaddis Premier?
So my primary function is a financial advisor, and I would say secondarily, I am the assistant to Derek. So one of the things I enjoy doing is recruiting other advisors to the firm as either employees or partners, primarily as partners.
Yeah.
There's a variety of people that we're constantly engaged in with, various stages of that process, just getting to know people to see if they're a good fit.
Yeah.
Explaining and educating them what we do to see if we are a good fit for them.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty long process. We like to really take our time and get to know people before they join us.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is going to be educational for myself as well as our listeners.
Yeah.
So what are we looking for, Dave? Like what makes good qualities for someone to engage in a conversation for joining our firm?
Yeah, good question. I think the main thing is culture. Are they a good fit? Do they have the same central belief system that we do? Do they have similar operating procedures and policies? The kind of people we're talking to are usually 5 to 10 years with experience in the industry as a financial advisor.
Yeah.
So competency is usually not in question. If it is, we're not going to talk to them very long.
Yeah, they'd be gone by now if they weren't competent.
Right. So we're looking for people established in the business that are looking for something that we can bring to the table.
Okay.
We want them to bring something to the table. And the general concept of bringing in people as partners is 2 + 2 = 5. We're looking for synergies, cost savings, people that are doing certain things maybe better than we're doing them, or vice versa, trying to help each other out to grow a bigger, better firm. To really, it's for the benefit of the client too. We want this firm to be here for generations, and we want to take care of generations of clients. Yeah. And I believe last time we checked, the most generations we serve with one family is about 5.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you have, I mean, obviously you haven't listened to Teresa's because she just, we filmed that a short while ago, but generational was definitely something that came up in a conversation with her too. Yeah. So let's jump in. We'll just kind of be all over the board here with our questions, but tell me about that belief system. So whenever we're having conversations, what kind of belief system are we looking for?
Well, we are all the partners are Christians, so it's a Christ-centered mindset. We all have very similar backgrounds in that area. And I think going back to the generational thing, that's something that I learned at Victory Life Church. Dwayne Sheriff was a senior pastor at that point, and I learned a lot about just generational thinking. I think all too often most people in America are very short-sighted. It's what can we do today? What can we do for ourselves? and there's not an enormous amount of planning. I mean, we all want our kids to do well, but I don't think there's a lot of people making plans for their great-great-grandchildren.
Yeah.
Right? And I've kind of tried to adopt that mindset and try to get my kids set up for success so that they can be, pass that down to their kids and their children's children.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, there's an old saying that I've heard before, and it's just a different way of thinking. Is we are not inheriting the world from our parents and grandparents. We're borrowing it from our children and our grandchildren.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And so, yeah, very, very similar way of thinking.
Yeah. The Bible says a wise man lays up an inheritance for his children's children. So that's the goal. Maybe one day I'll be wise.
Yeah,
the jury's still out.
Yeah, you can quote the Bible. I'll quote whatever I just quoted.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's get into your story. So what brought you into this industry?
Well, I worked I had a variety of sales and management jobs after college, and I eventually wound up working for a manufacturing firm in Sherman, and I was let go the Monday before Christmas in 2004.
That's rough.
And they were kind enough to pay me some severance pay through the end of the year, so that gave me time to find another job.
Yeah, were you married with kids at that point?
Yes, I was very married and had had both kids already, and so I did not want another job. I wanted a career. I really felt like that job that I had there at that manufacturing company was going to be a very long career. So I was very surprised. They downsized, had sales staff of 4 people and went down to 2. So I was one of those 2, obviously. And so I spent a lot of time researching different career fields, looking for different opportunities. I had a few sales and management opportunities literally the same week I got laid off.
Yeah.
Just didn't feel like that's where I needed to be. Long story short, I ran across Edward Jones and did a lot of research on them and thought, man, that looks like that'd be really interesting. I thought that would kind of help me fix my ignorance about money and financial planning and that kind of thing, and how to really, at that point, my wife and I had not been the best stewards of our money. But so I thought, here's a way I can help other people and help myself at the same time. So long story short, I went through a bunch of interviews there, got hired, and I got some good training there. I was there about 4 years, and then I left there and went to work for Landmark Bank. Rest in peace.
Yeah,
that was a great place to work for about 8 years.
Yeah,
and I left there to buy Premier Investment Advisory Services, which was in Ada, Oklahoma.
Yep,
that opportunity just kind of coincided with my desire to leave the bank anyway. So I went out on my own, started my own business.
Yeah. And
then about 6 months later, Teresa and I partnered up, and here we are.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened in between there. But the point of the reason I did all that was really, I wanted a long-term career, something I could support myself and my family with, a way to build that generational wealth, which is a very long, ongoing process.
Yeah.
We're not there yet. And again, I wanted to help other people in the process of doing that. That was one of my very strong desires and goals.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. So you lost your job, but the day before Christmas?
The Monday before Thanksgiving.
The Monday before Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Married, kids. Tell us about your family.
So I went to college at Southeastern Oklahoma State University here in Durant, Oklahoma. And I met my wife the first semester I was going to college. We met close to Halloween in 1991. That was my first year of college. And we were engaged in December and married on March 7th, 1992.
Okay.
So we've been married 31 years now. It was about 6-7 years into it when we've had our first child, Zoe. She was born in 1996. And then Mercedes came along in 2002. She'll actually be 21 next month. So that was a big transition. The kids were young, for sure, especially Mercedes. She was very young at that time. So it was, again, it was not something we were expecting, not something we were looking to do. Like a lot of big changes in your life, it just happens to you.
Yeah.
And you deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's worked out great.
Yeah. Curious, this is not on the sheet. How'd you come up with your kids' names?
So the first one, Zoe, her full name is Zoe Nicole Reed. And Zoe Life Ministries was part of Victory Life Church. That was the tape ministry back in the day.
Yep.
They used to give away free tapes.
All I remember is they had the Zoe building.
Right.
And so that's probably where that came from.
Yep. And so we were curious, my wife and I were, what does that word mean? It means God kind of life.
Yeah.
My wife has had very difficult pregnancies every time she's been pregnant. And so it just meant a lot to us to use that name. Nicole, not sure if it came from anywhere in particular. It just sounded good.
Yeah. Yeah. You just liked it.
Yep. And then Mercedes, I've always liked that name. I actually heard it for the first time watching The Count of Monte Cristo, the original version. The love interest of the head character was Mercedes.
Yeah.
And I just always liked that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Good.
Found out it was a person's name before it was a car's name, and that.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, good. So you named her after the person, not the car.
But I tell people all the time, her name fits her very well because she's expensive and high maintenance.
That's great. So tell me more. One of the things in getting to know you is I'm always interested in hearing about is your work experience. So tell me more about your work experience prior to becoming a financial advisor.
It's very varied.
Before the sales. Yeah.
Right. So, my first sales job was working the Easy Pawn here in Durant. So my wife and I both worked there through college. And that was a very interesting experience. I knew nothing about the pawn shop business.
Yeah.
My wife started working there. She told them I was available. I went down and interviewed. The manager's name was a guy named James, and took me in the back room. And we sat at this little card table covered up with a bunch of junk. And he was doing this interview. And he pulls out this nickel-plated 45 over and under Derringer, and he said, "How much would you loan on this gun?" I didn't have a clue, So I looked at it and I thought, $50. And he said, "How did you arrive at that?" And that was really the question he was trying to get to.
Yeah.
And I said, I would assume the gun's worth at least $100, and if you loan half of what it's worth, you can't go wrong with that.
Yep.
So that's the enormous amount of thought I put into it, but that was the answer. And he said, "All right. When can you start and can you cut your hair?" Because it was very long at that point in my life. But we had a lot of interesting experiences at the pawn shop. I work with a very different type of person nowadays.
Yeah.
Managing money versus loaning people anywhere from $2 to $100.
Yeah. So tell me, so will be a two-pronged question. I want to know, what's the most interesting experience that obviously you can share?
Yeah.
Privately between us. Don't worry about the cameras. And then what's the most interesting thing that was ever pawned? So what's the most interesting experience at the pawn shop?
Oh man. So probably one of the most interesting, couple of times people did try to pawn stolen items. Mindy's parents were robbed and their house was just ransacked. They tore up everything and they stole all of her mom's jewelry. Maybe a week or two after that, a gentleman came in. I say gentleman loosely, but he came in and was trying to pawn my mother-in-law's jewelry. And my wife was in the back. And so I told the guy, I said, "Hey, I'm going to weigh this, test it, we'll let you know how much we give for it, and I'll be right back." And so I took it in the back, and I told Mindy, I was like, "Hey, this is your mom's stuff. Call the police. I'm going to stall this guy." Right? And so she calls the police, and she just there's some people down here, trying to pawn this or whatever. And so the police come in, guns drawn, armored vests and all that stuff.
SWAT team shows up.
Body armor. And you're and so, of course, the guy got busted. And come to find out he was fencing it for the people who had stolen it so they could buy drugs and stuff like that,
You said fencing?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So he had bought it from them cheap, and then he was trying to resell it to get the money that he used to pay. He was trying to make a profit off of that.
Yeah.
So, it's a very common criminal thing, Derek.
Okay. That tells you where I'm at in my criminal activity.
You learn that really quick in the pawn shop.
Fencing. Okay.
The most interesting thing, oh man. Maybe not the most interesting, but one thing I do remember very, very vividly. At that point, when we first started working there, that particular pawn shop sold beer and minnows and alcohol, tobacco, firearms. I mean, they sold everything. And a guy came in and pawned a pipe wrench for $2 so he could buy a 40 ounce of whatever it was he was drinking. Now, the guy that I worked with, he had actually loaned money on some false teeth one time.
Oh, my gosh.
Fake leg. We loan money on just about anything.
The fake leg. So how?
So I don't know how that worked.
I'm curious. Yeah.
I was not there when he did that, but he was telling me that. I don't think I really had anything super weird.
I hope he had an extra one.
Yeah.
The guy that pawned the leg.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah. I never thought to ask that question.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, the whole pawn shop thing. So my grandfather was an auctioneer. Did I tell you that?
Yeah.
I told you that?
Yeah.
And so Even as an auctioneer, you have to value things on the fly.
Yeah.
It's like you have a box of stuff. It's like pick one thing. What's it worth? And that's where you start.
Right.
So I think probably that's a skill set that's probably unique to pawn shopping as well. Is someone brings you something. Oh, this is a 45 still silver plated Derringer or whatever it was, and you got a decent idea of what it's worth.
Yeah, I used to be much more in tune with that kind of thing. We regularly kept books and cutouts from the newspaper and stuff like that of what the value of various items were. But by far, the thing that people brought in most were guns, jewelry, and video games.
Yep.
There was all kinds of other stuff, but those are probably the mainstays. Those are easy to value.
Yep.
Especially with the guns and jewelry, they don't go bad sitting on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Electronics do.
Yeah.
So we tend to not get very much for those. Of course, they don't have near the value they used to.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So you mentioned you mentioned a little bit about the church you go to, church we go to.
Yep.
How you named your daughter. So tell us a little bit about your faith. How has your faith influenced how you run your business or how you just conduct yourself daily?
Yeah, I think it makes a big difference in how I do it because my goal, again, from day one, I started out in this business to help people. Zig Ziglar's platinum rule says you can have everything you want in life if you help enough other people get what they want. And I think with the faith-based practices that we, use, you're always trying to do the right thing for the customers, whoever we're working with. I have had presentations with people before where I sit in front of them and show them two different options. And especially when we were doing more transaction-based business and fee-based business, and I would say, here's your two options. Here's the pros and cons of both. Here's how much these things are going to cost.
Yeah.
And I would tell them, this one's going to cost me more, but I really think this one is better for you,
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's very easy to kind of rip people off and make a lot more money in the short term.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it pays dividends just doing the right thing for people.
That's right.
And that's obviously, you could call that a moral thing as well, but it's also very biblical, just, treating people right the way that you would want people to treat you.
Yeah. And do you think, on that moral perspective, do you think that's an advantage or a disadvantage in business?
I think it's both. And it comes to the short-term, long-term thing.
Yeah.
In the short term, it's somewhat a disadvantage because you could probably, in a lot of cases, make more off of somebody in a short period of time.
Yep.
But those people are eventually going to realize what has happened to them, and they'll say very bad things about you, and they won't ever come back. And that's obviously what we're looking for here at Gaddis Premier. We want people to be clients for life and for their children and their children's children to be, we want to help all those generations of people. Yeah. And you can't do that if you're taking advantage of people. So I've never wanted to take advantage of people. I just want to help as many people as much as we can. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say it's sometimes difficult to execute your business in that manner, or?
No, not for me. Good. No, it's just become such an ingrained thing. Yeah. I mean, I will admit in the very first year in this business, I made very little money. Yeah. And it was a little bit more difficult. Sometimes you see, I could make more commission if I did this product than this one over here. But again, I never did that because, again, we're legally required to disclose to people any conflicts of interest and what the fees are and that kind of thing. And I've never wanted to stray away from, fulfilling that requirement.
Yeah, I think it's easy to, one of the things, that we try to do as a firm is try to educate people, like you said. And I think it's very difficult to take advantage of an educated person.
Correct.
Right. And so when we put ourselves in the position of an educator, not only are we equipping that, we are equipping that person to make the best decision for themselves. Yep. So whether they do business with us or do business with someone, we know that they're going to do what's in their best interest if they,
Right. Because I think trust is very important in this business. For somebody to turn money over to you to manage, they have to trust you. Yes. And I have had clients before just tell me, "Oh, Dave, just do whatever you want to do. I trust you." And as much as I appreciate that,
scary.
I always tell them, I said, "Look, you're that kind of attitude will get you taken advantage of." Yes. And although I'm not going to do that, you need to make sure I'm not doing that. You need to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, how much it costs. Yeah. So that, you can also stick with it if something, we have dips in the market, right? Things go up and down. And when things go down, you need to know why we're doing what we're doing and that there's a plan involved. Yep. This is short term, it's temporary, but if you ever watch, trying to think of the name of that show where they're American Greed. They've always got people on there who've been taking advantage of Ponzi schemes and stuff like that. And it's always people that were not affiliated with any big company like Schwab or anything like that. They didn't have good compliance oversight. They just hang on a shingle and pretend to be an advisor, and they steal everybody's money.
Yep.
And it's just because people blindly trusted them. So I think the education part that you're talking about is extremely important, making sure people understand why we're doing what we're doing as well as what we're doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that kind of leads us into the next question about core beliefs. So are there any like core values or beliefs that you would say you live your life by?
Well, I've already said this, but I think really going back to the very beginning, I mean, from the first day that I stepped foot in the office and started pretending to be a financial advisor, was, again, the Zig Ziglar's Platinum Rule. Just, I just wanted to help other people. I never focused on, what I was making in the process. My wife and I, our family has been blessed by this. We've had a comfortable living. We're not going to get rich off of it, I don't think. But we've done well enough to take care of ourselves and our kids and all that kind of thing by helping other people. Yeah. And so that's my core value, I guess, is just to make sure that the client is taken care of. I'll get taken care of the process of doing that. Yep. That's secondary.
Yep. So so thinking forward, like what are your goals over the next 5 or 10 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's really, this is such a fluid situation. And the reason I say that, we're in growth mode. We know there's going to be change. We just brought in Leanne Brooks 3 weeks ago. Yes. We are quite a bit bigger than we were when we did the merger a year and a half ago. A little bit. So it's kind of hard to really guesstimate that, but we do have some goals. I mean, I would like to see us at least 500,000 in AUM in 5 years or less. In 10 years, about $1.5 billion. And I also think that 10 years is probably an easier thing for me to answer because that's the point I will be older than I want to be, I guess. I'll be 61 in 10 years, and that would probably be the beginning of my exit strategy. Yeah. And that'll probably be a multi-year process, but that's about the point. I'd say somewhere around 60, 61 is when I plan on starting to think about how I'm going to leave and how long that's going to take and that kind of thing. So
so those, and you did a great job of communicating our goals as a firm, but think personally, like what's 5 or 10 years for Dave Reed?
That's a good question. I don't know that I have a really great answer for that. Most of my life has been very reactionary, to be honest with you. Yeah. And I've constantly purposed to be better and do more. But when it comes to real specific goals, I've not been real great at setting those. So I'd have to ask me that again at the end. We'll see if I have a better answer.
I'll give you 5 more years. I'll ask you in 5 years.
Okay.
We'll have to, and I mentioned this on the podcast that Josh and I did. I think I did. I had a buddy listen to it and refer back and say we need to talk more about it. It's this idea of purposive drift. Yeah. So it's like you have a purpose, but obviously within reason, you drift within the boundaries of that purpose. Yeah. Towards an ultimate objective. Yeah. So
I mean,
I have a lot of friends that they like that.
It's a very vague statement, but I want to be a better person. Possibility with that by 5 years or somewhere around that point, I could be a grandfather, which is kind of crazy. Yeah. To think about that kind of thing. But I want to, whatever that looks like and whenever it happens, I want to make sure I'm doing a good job at it.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking forward, so what would you like to tell your future self if you were watching or listening to this podcast 10 years from now?
Focus more on my health. It's become readily apparent to me, especially being in this business, we work with a lot of people in their 60s, 70s, sometimes 80s and beyond, and had an event this summer where I was with a good-sized group of people, like 30 people or so, and most of those people were 10 to 15 years older than I was. And they all have some kind of problem, hip replacement, knee replacement, just various ailments that prevent them from doing, activities of daily life, just things that we take for granted, to being able to walk and jump and run. Not that I do enough of that, but I can. Yeah. I just don't. So I'm aware probably a lot more this last year since I have turned 51 that running out of time to make this kind of significant changes that need to be made to still be active in my 70s and 80s.
Yeah, I think that's good. There's a gentleman that I listen to from a health perspective, and he talks about the last decade.
Yeah.
Everybody's got one.
Yeah. You never know what it is.
And you think about what are the things you want to do in your last decade, and you can reverse engineer your health to this point. So you can say, in my last decade, what do I want to be doing? Do I want to be playing on the floor with grandkids or great-grandkids? Do I want to be able to lift up, pick up grandkids, great-grandkids? Do I want to be able to, just whatever you want to be able to do in that last decade? And you can pretty well get, with a high degree of certainty, the tasks you need to be able to do right now.
Yeah.
Because obviously, unless the Lord comes back, there's a pretty steady deterioration process in the human condition.
Yeah.
But at some point, we can figure out, okay, what do I need to do today to make sure that my last decade, I can do those things.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right. So 10 years now, let's look back. So instead of going forward, if you were to say something to yourself 10 or 20 years ago, what would that be?
It would be the same answer.
The same thing?
I think it'd be twofold, though.
I
didn't touch on the second part, but I would definitely focus more on my health, but reading more.
Okay.
I primarily, I guess probably up until my mid-30s or even my early 40s, I read a lot. It was mostly fiction-based stuff, but I've also read a lot of motivational books and self-help books, and sales training books, and that kind of thing. But that's something that's probably lacking in my life, is I don't read enough.
Yeah. Thinking back, do you have any books?
I've read enough nonfiction, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any books that stick out that you've read that you enjoyed?
Oh, it's been so long.
They could be nonfiction. Any authors?
Well, my favorite author is Lewis L'Amour.
Okay.
And I think I get that from my dad. That was somebody my dad read a lot.
Yeah.
And I had a high school English teacher who had a large collection of books, and she saw me reading one of my dad's books one day, and she said, "Oh, you like that?" And I said, "Yeah." So she brought me a whole box. She had it in her closet, and she just let me swap them out whenever I wanted to. When I finished one, I would put it in and take another one.
Yeah.
And there was a week or two that went by where I was getting a new book every day, and she's like, "Are you not finding one you like or whatever?" I said, "No, I'm reading them." She said, "You're reading a whole book every day?"
Yeah.
I said, "Yeah, I had an hour ride on the bus to school and from school. And that point in my life, classes were pretty easy at that point and didn't have a hard class schedule. So I probably spent half my time at school reading those books. So in about, I guess, 4 to 6 hours a day, I could get through a whole book.
Wow.
They're not huge books. Lewis L'Amour, they're paperback books, whatever. So I've read a lot. I probably read everything he's written.
Yeah.
Just about. So.
Yeah. Is it so? I've never heard anyone say Lewis L'Amour. Is it
Yeah.
Louis?
Yes.
Or is it Lewis?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never met him, but he's French in descent, so I would assume they probably do pronounce it Louis L'Amour.
Yeah, I think he lived kind of close to where we lived in New Mexico, Colorado for a while.
Oh, okay.
I think he was in that southern Colorado
I'll
area.
give you a little story that's not on the Q&A sheet there.
Yeah.
So my wife and I, we bought a house out in Gordonville, Sherwood Shores area, built a house actually. And then we wound up buying the little trailer house right behind it and selling the house we built. But our next door neighbor was a guy named Dale Atkins. And Dale's claim to fame was he was the illustrator for all the covers for the Louis L'Amour books. So he actually gave us a few prints, and we bought a couple of things from him and whatever. But I haven't seen him in years and years. But we live right next door to that guy. And most of the pictures that he showed me, I could tell you what book they were from.
Yeah, they were on the book.
Yeah, they were book covers. That's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. That is kind of cool. All right. So before we get to the last question, I think we've still got some time. So we just had our client event.
Oh yeah.
And I would say it was probably one of the more unique events. And I thought about it because you were talking about kind of focusing on physical health and doing things like that. So what did you think of the event last night?
There's some pain going to be involved in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can grow without some pain, right? So I
agree.
I'm not going to get into everything that guy said, but one of the things I got out of that, no pain, no gain, right? That's a real simple way of saying it. And the amount of gain that you want out of your life probably going to determine how much pain you can take.
Yeah.
That kind of just referenced some of Dwayne's recent teachings, and our church in general has been kind of pushing this concept of capacity, that whatever you think you can do a lot more. Our capacity is much greater than it is on our own, right? God will expand your capacity on an as needed basis, kind of so I know that I can do a lot more than I'm doing now because I'm not doing much.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I got out of that presentation last night, was just the fact that you can push yourself a whole lot more than you think you can.
Yeah.
The concept of staying awake for 96 hours, insane to me. 24 hours is probably the farthest I've ever gone, and there was a Cadillac wreck involved shortly after that. It's another story.
Yeah. Well, like you said, they stop it at 96 and let them sleep for 2 hours and then do a little more, because at 96 hours, like, the risk of cardiac arrest goes through the roof.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah, can't imagine that.
Yeah, anyone that knows me knows I thoroughly enjoy my sleep.
Yeah, that's the thing I value very much.
Yeah, I go to bed, I fall asleep, I wake up.
Yeah,
I go to sleep.
Yeah, I will say something else real quick about the client event. It was, and I noticed this last year. We had about 150 people, I think it was last night, and looking out in the crowd when I was doing a little intro and then the Q&A at the end, there's people in that room that have been clients of mine for 18 years. Since day one, they've stuck with me through the changes that I've been through. Yeah, and those people mean a lot to me. And there was a few people in that room that I've known for a really long time, and I just thought, man, those people have trusted me for a long time, and they've also been very successful, right? If you have a plan and a process and you commit to it and you stick to it, you'll be successful. Yeah, assuming the process and plan are good. Yeah, which they have been, right? Yeah. And so that's the point. I think the people who don't typically do well in the financial process, we occasionally have clients that either give up too soon. Yep. They want to go their own way. As we're doing client reviews throughout the year, I've always noticed the people who have the worst returns usually had the most input. They wanted to change this, change that. Yeah. Let's go to cash. Let's get out of this, that kind of thing. But the people in those rooms that, again, have been clients for almost 2 decades, they've stuck with the program, and they're way better off for it. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, getting back to kind of your focus on your physical stuff, I think there's such a strong correlation between that and seeing success in your finances. Yeah. Right. We are not, the things we are doing are not necessarily exciting or sexy, or they're boring. Yeah. Right. It's like it's either death by 1,000 cuts or victory by 1,000 cuts. Yeah. Right. You either win or lose by the small decisions that you make on a daily basis. Yeah. Yeah. I was at Rotary on Thursday. Well, I guess that was yesterday, wasn't it? That was yesterday. Wow. Okay. Tuesday, actually, I went. I'm sorry. Anyway, I went Tuesday. And the new high school soccer coach was speaking. And he made the comment that what they're really focusing on day in and day out is fundamentals. Yeah. You do the basics really, 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 really well, and then you start to execute plays. He says he's got a lot of people in his team like, well, how are we going to do this, coach? And how are we going to do that? And what's our method of play going to be? And what kind of strategy are we? He said, well, none of that matters if you don't have the basics down. Yeah. Right? So if you have the discipline to nail the basics and get them 100% right 100% of the time, the rest will kind of take care of itself. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. All right. So last question. So what's one takeaway that you would like our listeners to walk away from this episode? These podcasts are going to get better. Oh, come on. That was the one question on my page that was blank when I went through this. I think if I had to say one thing, the name of the podcast, Faith, Family, and Fortune. That is what Faith, Family, Finance. Okay, well, I got it right. Okay. We might add a fourth for. It's on the name of the to be discussed. The name of the podcast is important. Yes, it focuses on the things that we believe, the things we focus on, and those values I think are just core to the firm. And going back to the kind of people we're looking for to join our firm and the kind of clients we want. right? Unfortunately, not everyone can be a client of Gaddis Premier. So we are somewhat selective on who we choose to do business with.
Yeah.
And they should be choosy when they do business with us. So
I
we're
agree.
looking for people that are good fit.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we, through the interview process, like if someone's not a good fit, like they're probably not going to enjoy being clients of ours anyway.
Correct.
Right? Because of the core values that we have, the things that we hold to be true. That's why we sort of attract the people that we attract.
Correct. Yeah. Very good. Your answer is better than mine.
And I agree with you. No, this podcast is probably going to get better. This is only
it's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, and I say that I'm biased because I'm just enjoying this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's actually more fun than I thought it would be super awkward.
Yeah.
But no, it's fun.
Yep. I think, I think the podcast will get better. My enjoyment of it probably won't. I think I'll like it even more. Or maybe less.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so thank you guys for listening. I would just like to close, Dave, I really appreciate you coming on. And this is not just for the podcast. This is sincere, heartfelt. Like, I have thoroughly been honored, in being your partner. And I really appreciate, your heart for, Dave gives some of us in the firm a hard time for not being social. I would say we're more introverted. But Dave is not. I know, you love people, and I think that shows in your desire to bring other advisors on. Yeah. You have a conviction that what we are doing is good and it's right.
I do. Yeah.
And it's in the best interest of the clients, and you want to bring everybody along with you. So I really appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.